Claire arrived on campus with the exact hopes every junior secretly carries: less chaos, more quiet, grades that would finally look like the hours she put in, and maybe a room that felt like hers. Move-in day smelled like mowed grass and cardboard tape. Resident assistants laughed at inside jokes. Parents hauled plastic bins. A marching band practiced badly somewhere far away. The dorm she'd been assigned looked like every college dorm built in the last century: too long, too brick, too proud of its age. But the way the light gathered along the third-floor windows comforted her. She wanted to believe that a simple room could fix tiredness, that a desk lamp and a reliable kettle could hold back the mess. Her key stuck once, twice, then turned with a tired click. The door swung open to a space cut neatly in half by 2 beds, 2 desks, 2 dressers. On the left, someone had arrived first. The bed was made like a hotel catalog. Pens sat parallel on a desk. Under the frame, a leather trunk waited with a brass clasp that caught the window's glow like a small, watchful eye. The girl on that bed lifted her face at the sound of the door. "Hannah," she said, as if reciting the start of a rule. Her voice was careful. Her posture had the stillness of a photograph. Claire smiled, said her own name, and felt the smile slide off the room's surface without sticking. She unpacked slowly, jeans folded, textbooks stacked, a mug wrapped in newspaper that crinkled like dry leaves. The floor was too clean. The air was too still. Normal was here, yet Normal kept its shoes on, standing by the door, unsure whether to come in. Claire told herself the stiffness was first-day nerves. She did not know yet that some rooms come preloaded with a pause. Hannah proved polite in the way that ends conversation. "Thanks. Sure. Good night." All delivered at the exact volume teachers ask for and strangers trust. She moved with measured economy, as if each gesture were an assignment to complete without drawing attention. Her hair was always tied back. Her shoes lived aligned heel to heel. And every evening at 10, she pulled a leather-bound notebook onto her lap and wrote in a slanted, hurried hand that made more noise than the pen should have. She did not snack. She did not stream shows. She did not bring friends. When Claire asked about classes, Hannah nodded, offered the course numbers, and then asked nothing in return, which felt less like rudeness and more like a rule learned long ago: never invite. The trunk under Hannah's bed kept its place like furniture that's been there longer than the building. Claire noticed it the way you notice a closed door in a house tour. You accept it, then imagine what's behind it, then tell yourself to stop imagining. Once casually she asked, "Family heirloom?" Hannah's eyes flicked up fast, not angry, exactly, but alert, as if a fire alarm had chirped. "It's private," she said, not unkindly, and placed the notebook on top of the trunk like a lid on a second lid. That night, when the dorm went soft with sleep and the hallway settled, Claire heard a whisper. She thought it was the heating unit at first, the small hiss old radiators used to tell you they still work. But the whisper had rhythm, the rhythm of words spoken too quietly to understand. She rolled over. Hannah wrote, head bent, mouth moving. The page filled and filled. Claire closed her eyes and tried to count backward from 100. But at 91, the whisper slipped through the numbers and lived there, gentle and relentless, until the clock found 2 and the whisper stopped as if a switch had been thrown inside the room. The third night built the rumor. Someone down the hall whispered to someone else that Hannah was a 3 a.m. pacer, bare feet silent on tile, head tilted like she was listening for a name only she could hear. Claire wanted to defend her, but defense requires information, and she had none, only a collection of small facts that added up wrong. The RA posted a smiling reminder about quiet hours, a flyer for a comedy show papered over a flyer for a blood drive. The vending machine in the lounge ate $2 and returned nothing. College kept doing college. Yet after midnight, the hallway changed temperature the way a room changes subject. From their beds, students could hear a door open with care and close with care, then open again as if a patient hand rehearsed the motion until it learned a smoother silence. Claire lay awake and watched the thin seam of light under their door brighten, dim, brighten. She did not get up. Breath by breath, the room auditioned a new kind of quiet, not absence, but presence holding its breath. Hannah's notebook closed with a small thump. The trunk received it. Claire counted her heartbeats to disguise the counting. When the light under the door finally went dark, she fell into a sleep that felt more like a truce than rest, and dreamed of doors that led to other doors that led to hallways without ends, all of them lit by that same red word asking for an action: exit. Hannah disappeared on a Wednesday, so ordinary it could have been a template. Claire woke to the pale slice of morning on the wall and reached for the kettle she kept on a hot plate. Steam climbed. The day arranged itself. She said morning to the neat side of the room and waited for the answering morning, which did not come. Hannah's bed was made to its usual standard, the pillow centered, the blanket iron flat. On the nightstand lay the necklace Hannah wore every day, a thin silver chain with a locket so small it was almost punctuation. The laptop on her desk slept with its lid half open, as if someone had stepped away to get a charger and been interrupted by the ending of a hallway. In the bathroom, a toothbrush stood in a cup beside Claire's, identical except for the color. Claire checked the closet, the lounge, the laundry room. She texted the group chat. Anyone seen my roommate this morning? Thumbs replied with jokes first, then shrugs. By noon, the RA's knock was soft, the way people knock when they hope you won't answer and make them responsible. Reports were filed. Boxes were checked. Someone asked if Hannah had a boyfriend. Someone asked if she drank. Someone asked if she had seemed depressed, as if a tidy bed were a symptom. Claire kept saying the same sentence until it felt wrong in her mouth. All her stuff is here. She meant people don't run without shoes, without cash, without a coat. And also, the room does not feel empty. It feels crowded by the shape of a person not present. When evening arrived and the sun pressed its last flat gold against the brick outside, the trunk's brass caught it and threw a coin of light onto the ceiling. Claire watched that coin fade and understood she would not sleep. She told herself not to touch Hannah's things. Then she touched the laptop because rules soften under fear. The lid rose with the smooth resistance of a machine used daily and left suddenly. The screen blinked awake into a gray, crawling field of static that made a soft hiss in the speakers, like tide water pulling back over pebbles. A video call window already open sat centered on the desktop, its title bar empty, its buttons unresponsive when she pressed the trackpad. Behind the noise, a shape stuttered into existence, a pale oval, a line that could be a mouth. The suggestion of hair then broke apart, then returned a little clearer, like a face trying to swim up from the bottom of a lake. Claire leaned in, breath fogging the glass, and let her name leave her as a question. Hannah? The hiss flattened for a second, became the sound of a room when someone decides to speak, and in that flatness, Claire thought she heard her name transformed into something more pleading. She reached for the power key. The screen fought her, flickered, through a scatter of pixels that looked for a heartbeat like a door with light leaking around it, then surrendered to black. The sudden silence made her ears ring with the ghost of the hiss. She closed the lid and placed the laptop exactly where it had been because order felt like one of the few tools left. In the window glass, she saw herself shoulders tight, eyes too bright, and beneath her reflection the darker block of the trunk, waiting with the patience of a thing that does not have to move to arrive. The hallway beyond their door breathed. A far-off hinge sighed. Claire sat very still and counted to 100 without making it to 80. Claire tried to convince herself the strange events were her own imagination feeding on stress, but imagination doesn't ring your phone with the name of someone who no longer exists in the building. It happened just after 2 in the morning, a time when the dorm was at its deepest quiet, when every door in the hall slept like a shut mouth. Her phone vibrated so hard against the mattress that it startled her awake. The cracked screen lit with an impossible name, Hannah. She had never entered her roommate's number, never exchanged contact info, and yet there it was, paired with a contact image that couldn't have existed. Hannah's face, blurred as though caught mid-motion, her mouth stretching open into a soundless scream. Claire's thumb hovered, frozen. She didn't press accept. She didn't press decline. The call answered itself with a click that sounded like a latch unhooking in a dark room. For a few seconds there was nothing but a steady hiss. Not like a normal phone's static, but like someone's breath feeding through broken glass. Then came the voice, distorted but still undeniably Hannah's, syllables chewed by interference. "Why didn't you open the door?" The question repeated, softer, heavier, as if each time Hannah asked it, she sank further into some unseen water. Claire panicked, flung the phone to the floor, but the voice kept bleeding out, echoing against the cinderblock walls. "Why didn't you? Why didn't you?" Her hands pressed against her ears so hard they ached, yet the words filled her chest anyway, vibrating in her bones. When the line finally cut, the silence that replaced it was worse, because silence, once broken, always comes back with teeth. The next night, Claire told herself she would fight back, that she would do something as ordinary as brush her teeth and wash her face, proof that routine could still anchor her. She turned the bathroom faucet to cold, let the water drum into porcelain, splashed it against her cheeks, and waited for the relief of sensation. Instead, she watched in disbelief as the mirror fogged. Steam should not exist where no heat lives, but the glass bloomed with mist anyway, thickening until the reflection of her own face vanished. At first, the fog looked random, swirling shapes with no pattern, but then the shapes sharpened, 2 circles like eyes, a thin slash for a mouth, a jawline she knew too well. Hannah's face stared back at her through vapor, more vivid than it had been on the laptop screen, eyes wide and glassy, lips moving though no sound came. Claire whispered, "Stop." But the fog pulsed like it had hurt her. Letters carved themselves into the condensation, shaky but legible. "Let me in." Her legs gave out and she backed into the bathroom door so hard it rattled in the frame. She turned, grabbed the handle, and fled without drying her face, water dripping onto the dorm carpet. In her head, the words repeated as if etched inside. "Let me in. Let me in." The bathroom light buzzed behind her, still on, the mirror still fogged, still waiting to be read again. When she returned to the dorm room, she stopped dead. The trunk, that damned trunk Hannah never touched in front of her, was no longer tucked beneath the bed. It sat squarely in the middle of the floor, perfectly positioned like someone had carried it there with care. Claire's stomach clenched. She knew she hadn't moved it, and no one else had a key. The brass clasp winked in the lamplight like a signal, like it had been waiting for this exact moment of confrontation. Something drew her closer despite every rational nerve screaming to leave. She crouched beside it, stretched a trembling hand, and laid her palm against the leather. Warmth pulsed beneath her skin, not the lifeless warmth of sun on furniture, but the living heat of flesh. She jerked her hand back, horrified. The trunk gave a faint thump from inside once, like a heartbeat answering her own. Claire staggered, gripping the desk for balance, gasping for air. She remembered Hannah's notebook, the frantic pages filled with drawings of doors, and one line that made her shiver harder now. The trunk is the doorway, Claire whispered to herself. She wasn't keeping her things in it. She was keeping it closed. And the horrible thought landed, maybe Hannah hadn't left without packing. Maybe Hannah had never left at all. That same night, the footsteps came back. Claire told herself she wouldn't look, but fear is curious, and curiosity has no brakes. She crept to the door and turned the knob an inch, pulling the wood toward her until a sliver of hallway appeared. The corridor stretched long and empty, washed in fluorescent yellow that buzzed faintly. But down at the far end, beneath the exit sign's red glow, a figure stood, small, still, female, the outline of long hair falling over shoulders. Claire's throat tightened. "Hannah," she whispered before she could stop herself. The figure didn't move. It didn't wave. It only tilted its head a fraction, like someone considering a puzzle. Then slowly it raised a hand. Claire slammed the door shut, locked it, pressed her back against it. Almost instantly, footsteps padded closer, stopping on the other side. The knob rattled, the wood quivered, and then, right against her ear, the whisper came again, clearer than it had ever been, as though lips brushed the surface of the door. "Claire, let me in." Tears welled in her eyes, her chest heaving as she shook her head violently. She didn't speak the word no, but the refusal vibrated in her body all the same. The knob stilled. The whisper went silent, but the air around her felt satisfied, as if patience were a luxury it owned in abundance. By morning, Claire could no longer resist the notebook. It waited on the desk like a dare. She flipped it open and forced herself to read every frantic page, ignoring the ache in her eyes, the nausea twisting her gut. The words were madness and warning all at once. "It waits behind the door. Don't let it ask twice. Mirrors count." Sketches littered the margins, doors and walls, doors and floors, doors inside other doors. And then she found the page that froze her blood. A crude drawing of their dorm room, familiar bed shapes, the window, the bathroom door, two stick figures, one lying in the bed, her bed, clearly marked with her initials in Hannah's jagged scrawl. The other figure stood at the door, hand outstretched. Beneath it, a line scratched so hard the paper nearly tore. "She won't open it for me." Claire's vision blurred. She dropped the notebook, backed into her bed, hugging her knees tight. She replayed the night Hannah vanished. That whisper at the door she had ignored, her refusal, her silence, and the thought struck her like an axe. What if that had been Hannah's last attempt to be saved? What if by refusing, Claire had locked her out of safety and into something else? The trunk sat heavy in the center of the room, and now it looked less like a piece of furniture and more like a verdict. Claire sat on her bed as the evening folded into a deeper, heavier night. She held her phone like it was both weapon and threat, the cracked screen glowing faintly against her knees. At first, the display was dark, harmless. Then, without warning, it lit again. The name Hannah shone bright, the distorted photo filling half the screen, those hollow eyes, mouth frozen mid-scream. The call answered itself once more. Claire didn't try to stop it this time. She listened, breath snagged in her throat, as silence stretched into a thin hum. The hum thickened, like static turning into words. Then she heard it, Hannah's voice, less broken now, clearer, as though distance had thinned. "Why didn't you open it?" The phrase stabbed at her chest. Claire found herself whispering back, "Because I didn't know which door you meant." The line paused, the hum flattening, as if the caller were listening. Then the voice replied, smaller, sharper. "This one." At that exact moment, the trunk on the floor gave a sharp metallic click, its clasp snapping open like a response. Claire dropped the phone. It slid off the bed and landed near the trunk, the glowing screen illuminating the brass clasp. She knew the warning from Hannah's notes. Don't let it ask twice. But hadn't she already heard it more than twice? Her body froze in indecision. She couldn't close her eyes. She couldn't move. The trunk waited, patient, humming faintly like an animal breathing in sleep. Her body moved without permission, knees pressing into the cold floor, hands stretching toward the trunk as though drawn by magnets. The brass clasp gleamed, reflecting the phone's faint blue glow. Claire whispered, "If I open you, do you come back?" The air in the room seemed to shift, pressing harder against her ears, carrying a whisper not from the phone now, but from the trunk itself. "Something always comes back." She swallowed hard, her throat dry, her chest constricting. She flicked the clasp and the lid shuddered as if resisting. With a creak that sounded too much like a groan, it opened an inch. Immediately, a draft of damp metallic air spilled into the room, thick with the smell of wet stone and rusted iron. Claire gagged. Inside the narrow opening, darkness swirled, deeper than the size of the trunk could hold, shifting like smoke trying to become a shape. She slammed the lid shut, heart hammering, tears pricking her eyes. But the moment the trunk closed, she saw it, a pale hand pressing against the inside of the lid from beneath, thin fingers straining, trembling, trying to push back. The lid rattled in its frame. Claire stumbled backward, knocking into her chair, whispering, "No, no, no." The notebook's warning screamed in her head, but the question burned hotter. If Hannah was inside, had she just refused her again? Claire ran to the window, her lungs clawing for air, fumbling with the latch until it finally gave. She shoved it open, desperate for the sharp night air. Cool wind rushed in, sweeping through the curtains. For a brief moment she felt relief, but when she looked into the glass, relief snapped like thread. Her reflection stared back pale, wide-eyed, and behind her reflection stood another figure, Hannah. Only it wasn't Hannah the way she remembered. The figure's head tilted at that impossible angle, mouth moving silently, eyes dark voids that seemed to pull light from the room. Claire spun, heart in her throat, but nothing stood behind her. She whipped back to the glass, and the figure was closer now, lips shaping words she couldn't hear. Claire whispered, "Stop!" But the reflection did not obey. She yanked the shade down violently, snapping it into place, shutting out the night. But the reflection lingered in her mind, burned there, moving lips over and over as if to say the same sentence that had haunted her since Hannah vanished. "Let me in." The dorm floor vibrated faintly beneath her feet, the same pulse she had felt at the trunk, as though every door and window in the building had learned the same rhythm. The trunk no longer waited. With a deafening crack, its lid slammed upward, spilling darkness that wasn't mere absence of light, but a living mist, black and wet, curling as it filled the room. Papers lifted from the desk and swirled like panicked birds. The lamp sparked, throwing violent bursts of light. In the mist, a shape began to rise, tall and broken, its movements jerky as though stitched together by wrong frames of film. It was Hannah's body, or something trying to use it. Thin arms hung too long. Fingers twitched like broken marionette strings. Her face came into view, skin pale, eyes hollow, mouth stretched wide as if still begging, still demanding. But the voice that erupted wasn't a whisper this time. It was a scream, sharp and wailing, words torn apart by fury and grief. "Why didn't you let me in?" Claire fell to her knees, clutching her ears, sobbing as the sound rattled her skull. The mist surged toward her, wrapping around her body, pulling, pressing. She gasped, trying to fight, but it seeped into her skin, colder than ice, heavier than water. Her last thought before the world flickered was that Hannah had not been asking for help. Hannah had been warning her. By morning, Claire was gone. The room was found in shambles, papers shredded, furniture overturned, the lamp shattered. Hannah's trunk lay closed in the center of the floor, clasp neatly locked as though nothing had ever disturbed it. The police wrote their reports, campus officials hung a board across the door, and by noon, the dorm whispered its own version of events. Some students said Claire had run, unable to handle the pressure. Others swore they had seen two figures pressed against the third-floor window just before dawn, one screaming to get out, the other pulling her back in. The administration called it an unexplained emergency. Hannah's belongings remain inside, untouched. The trunk remains, ordinary to anyone who doesn't look too long. And still, late at night, students swear they hear scratching at the locked door, a patient sound, followed by a whisper that slides through cracks like mist. "Why didn't you let me in?" They say if you pause, even for a heartbeat, the whisper will come again, softer, closer, until the door behind you feels heavier than before. And they say if you ever hear it ask a third time, you won't be the one left to answer.